So let me introduce you to the folks who are here on the webinar today. First, we have Amelia Lyons, who is the Maine Department of Education consultant for migrant and highly mobile students. Kristen Ferrulo, who is the military school liaison officer from Untitled Chapter, and myself, Gail Erdheim. I'm the Maine Department of Ed, Fluency Alternative Education, and Homeless Education consultant.
And we have muted all of the lines here, so we will not be taking any questions through the audio portion, but the chat feature is open, and that can be found up towards the top under the More section. There's a chat, or you can press Alt-H to open that. And we have shared the link where the resources will be posted there as well.
Schools are you representing?
Okay, so our goals for this webinar are to, first of all, make sure that everyone understands who is eligible under each of the programs we're going to be talking about, what the rights of students and families are under for each group, to talk about supports that we can provide for schools and students, and effective strategies for all the groups, and mostly to start thinking about how we can do a better job of supporting all of Maine's mobile students and learn from the work that we do in each of these areas to do so. Education stability, whether someone is experiencing instability because they're homeless or because work is taking them from place to place, can have lasting academic and social emotional impacts for students. And our goal is to, is to explore ways that we can maximize the educational, at least the educational stability of our students who are experiencing disruption in their lives for a variety of reasons, so that they're able to attend school more regularly, so that they are missing less instruction, and we have opportunities to remedy any educational gaps that already exist, and so that we can help families stay connected to their community through the school that their children attend. Okay, so we've had some discussions with schools around the state on this issue of what factors seem to be contributing most to student and family mobility in communities, and wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to add any additional insights that you might have in this area. So as I share the issues that have come forward thus far, if you have additional ideas about factors contributing to student and family mobility, if you would please share them with us through the chat, and we will add them to our growing list of information to share out to the field. Okay, things that came up were poverty, domestic violence, communities that have clustered shelters and community resources see a high degree of mobility, mobility within family relationships, substance abuse disorders, anything related to DHS placements and foster care, communities that have high populations of migrant workers, students who experience some disjunction between their own needs and the school that they're attending, and residential placements. Those are the things that came up. Please feel free to share any others.
So we're getting some more responses here: lack of housing, domestic violence, lots of foster placements, and high drug use, and some other agreements with everything on the list. Yeah. One other one that has come up in the past was also incarceration of parents. Was another specific that we, and substandard housing. Thank you for sharing. All right. Okay, so my name is Amelia Lyons, and I am the consultant for highly mobile and migratory students at the Maine Department of Education. And I wanted to share with you all briefly about the Migrant Education Program and students who qualify for this program. It's a federally funded program that's administered by the state. 47 states in the country have a migrant education program through their Department of Education. And it really serves to, whoops, sorry about that. It serves to help migrant students to achieve the same academic success as their peers. That's our overarching goal, is that we want them to be able to get their high school diploma. What we do is we provide supplemental educational services to students who are eligible. So we provide instructional support, like at-home tutoring, advocacy support, transportation, other support services, connecting them with other resources in the community, and also counseling services. And we serve 4 distinct populations. We serve 0 to 2, our pre-K students, our in-school students, and our out-of-school youth. The out-of-school youth are generally students who are here to work in agriculture, but are not currently enrolled in school, anywhere from 16 to 21 years old. And so to qualify for the Migrant Education Program, students need to have moved in the past 3 years. So they will be new to your district in the past 3 years, or they might have moved during the summer and then returned back home to your district. And they have to have a household member who has worked in agriculture or fishing. In southern Maine, we see a lot of families moving into the area to work in lobster processing or fish processing. The majority of our students are in Washington County, where they rake blueberries or their parents rake blueberries. Fishing for elvers sometimes can qualify. It's a real, any agricultural work or fishing work could potentially qualify for this program. We see students where their families work in apples and broccoli and potatoes. There's a wide range. And so the services that we provide are provided through our contractor. Mano and Mano are hand in hand. This is their logo on the top right here. They are based in Washington County, but we provide services statewide to any migrant children who qualify. And just a few more examples of the services that we do is really to help students enroll in their local school when they arrive. We could have, to be a migrant student, it really just means moving. So it could be somebody who's moved from Florida to Maine, or it could be somebody who's moved just across school districts from Westbrook to Portland, for example. And as long as they have someone in their family who's worked in agriculture or fishing, they could potentially qualify for the program. The same goes, they could be moving from another country and moving to Portland, Maine, and still qualify for the program. So a lot of what we do is helping students to enroll in their local schools, ensuring equal access and comparable services, and then providing that supplemental educational support that I mentioned before. Like a lot of the populations we'll talk about today, migrant students do automatically qualify for free lunch. They do not need to fill out any of the forms. I apologize, I'm a little under the weather today. So our regular school year services, this is just an example of some of the things that we do. We focus a lot on family engagement and family literacy. This here on the left is from is a word wall from a family in southern Maine where we worked with the student as they were learning English and also wanted to help their parents to learn English. In the middle, we have just 2 people having a meeting. This is representative of our school needs assessment meeting. So if we identify that there is an eligible migrant student in your district, we will send, we'll have one of our regional coordinators meet with either a guidance counselor or the classroom teacher or someone at the school who knows the student well to see how they're doing in school and how we can support the work that you all are doing with them through our at-home tutoring, for example. And then on the bottom right is just representative of any of our tutoring, homework help. We do a lot of enrichment activities with kids. It's really individualized to the needs of the student and the needs of the family as much as we can. During the summer, we focus on project-based learning. So our students outside of Washington County will do a project-based learning unit with their tutors. And then if the students are in Washington County, we have the Blueberry Harvest School, which is for students ages 3 to 13 whose parents are raking blueberries during the day. So students can come to the school. These are both photos from the school. We focus a lot on integrating other languages as much as possible. As you can see, we have a lot of Spanish speakers, Passamaquoddy and Micmac speakers, and we really try to make sure that the services that we provide and the teachers that we have at the school represent the communities that these students are coming from. And so the hardest part of our job is finding eligible students, and this is really the part that's important to communicate with schools, because you all often have an insight into these families that we don't necessarily have. One of the ways, these are just some of the ways that we find students. There's a national hotline that families can call to get connected to the local migrant education program in their state. We partner with community organizations like the Migrant Health Program. We have a presence in the community like at the Rakers Center down east for blueberries. And then we also will go door to door in farm and labor camps to talk to families and say these services exist for your children. But we also have this migrant school survey that goes out in any enrollment information for new students or at the beginning of the school year. It just has 2 really basic questions. Have your children moved with you across school district lines in the past 3 years? And did someone in the house work in agriculture or fishing in the past 3 years? If families answer no to either of those questions, then schools do not send those back to us. If they answer yes to both, then they do send those to the Department of Education, and then we follow up directly to see if the families are eligible. So if this form is new to you, it would be a good idea to talk to your registration office and see if they're familiar with the form or anything. If you have any questions on it or any feedback on it, definitely reach out to me. My contact info will be in this presentation, and also it's on the bottom of the form, which has the website and everything on where you can find it. All right. So we do have a quick another chat. The Migrant School Survey is one form that we use to identify highly mobile students, but we wanted to ask you all as well if there are other effective strategies that you use in your schools to identify these students. So just take a moment in the chat box if you want to add anything there. And some that we have said and that we have heard from other presentations from doing this around the state this last couple of weeks, providing awareness activities for all school staff or professional development, posting outreach materials and posters in schools and communities and community spaces, using enrollment and withdrawal forms. Thank you, Cecilia. It looks like we use McKinney-Vento form that we have created some time ago with a rock group. Okay. Yeah, those enrollment forms, making sure we ask about siblings. Awesome. Some people have seen the migrant survey before. Happy to see that. And then we have data collection sheet and enrollment packet, having a point of contact in each school. In one school, they shared that their school social worker is the one who gives students and families the first tour of the school. And through that, they're able to have a conversation to learn more about the family. And speaking with the previous school was a big thing. That came up quite a bit. Great, thank you, everyone. All right, so next we have Kristen with military families.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kristen Ferrulo. I'm the Military School Liaison Officer from the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard in Kittery, Maine. But I do cover all of the school districts in Maine and New Hampshire. So it doesn't matter where you guys are located. If you have any questions regarding military students, you can always send them my way. So who am I and what do I do? As a school liaison officer, I can tell you that there are school liaisons at every major military installation. I happen to work for the U.S. Navy, but our job is many-fold. One of the most important parts of our job is school transition support, or what we call a PCS, a permanent change of station. And basically that is when a family moves from one duty station to another duty station. We try to help provide the information and resources that they need to be most successful. Make sure that, their paperwork, their concerns, their questions are answered so that they can have the best outcome for their student. We also do deployment and reintegration support. We help families navigate the K-12 special education system, support homeschool families, create partnerships in education, and help educate about post-secondary preparation opportunities, as well as scholarships and things of that nature. And one of the most important things that we do is we are the conduit between the command, the installation, the school, and the community. So we serve as the subject matter expert in all things education for our military, so that they can continue on with their job and know that the families are helped along the way. So there are many emotional needs and concerns of our military students. There are the emotional needs. We call it the 2-week rule, that you have 2 weeks from when a family arrives, a student arrives in your school district, to make them feel welcome, to integrate them into our school, to make them feel part of something. So we really need to make sure that that's the first thing that happens when our new families come in. And the kids' biggest concern always is the lunchroom. Who are they going to sit with at lunch? And there's very easy ways to make that hopefully happen for students by providing a buddy, making sure that we understand that when a new student comes into school that they are going to be nervous or anxious, and just having an awareness that the lunchroom is something that's so fearful for them can help us to prepare to make sure that they have a good group of friends to sit with those first couple of days. They're also very concerned about getting attached to new friends, whether or not they'll be able to participate in extracurricular activities and sports. They are very concerned about deployment and reintegration, as that happens within their lives frequently, and that 1 in 15 students have lost a family member to war. So no matter how much we try to hide that or to believe that it's not real, it is, and they know it, and it's something they're quite fearful of when their family member deploys. From an educational perspective, these families will experience roughly 6 to 9 moves throughout their military career, and that is on an average. So we have families that maybe have the ability to stay more in one area once their children are school age, and we have families that have moved 12 and 13 times through their children's educational career. So that is a huge stress on families, not only during the move, but long before the move and after the move. They're also concerned about the transfer of credits, grades, and coursework. Will all of the things that they've done in previous schools matter? Redundant and missed testing that they would have to take again, and their concerns over that. Graduation requirements are a huge concern as well. Are the students going to be able to graduate on time? Will their special education services be transferred? And things as simple as changes in schedules and grading. Here in Maine and in many other places, we have traditional grading versus, just lost the word for it, proficiency-based grading, and that's a huge change for most families to make. So understanding that there could be questions or concerns regarding that as they enter your school is really important. The other important thing about understanding all of these various needs and concerns of not only our military kids, but that these are needs and concerns of all of the groups of children that we're discussing today in this webinar. Migrant families that move frequently, homeless or foster children that may move frequently. Children in general experience these types of concerns. So just having an awareness to that will hopefully make their transition smoother no matter which group they're in. So deployment and reintegration is really an interesting thing to talk about. When we talk about deployment, obviously we're talking about a family member that is leaving. They can be very sudden, seemingly overnight, and they can be gone for long periods of time, short periods of time, and often that time we say is set in sand. So a family member may be scheduled to come home within a few short weeks, and then that gets extended. So there's a lot of stress that goes along with deployments for families. Families often don't inform schools that the family member is deployed. Either they want to handle it themselves, or they have concerns that they'll be treated differently, or they have concerns for their safety, that if someone knows that the other family member is not home, that maybe that puts them in a place of not being able to handle, all the situations. During this time, kids can experience many phases of grief. And that's something that if you're not aware that this child is going through the deployment cycle, then you would not know that they are struggling with these feelings, or that they are changes with these heightened emotions. They may act out. Little Johnny or little Susie may go from being a very reserved child to being very outgoing, and just the opposite. So there's many different reasons why it's important to know whether or not our families are experiencing deployment. Now, the other part is reintegration. So that's when the service member comes home. We see all of the wonderful Facebook and ads on TV and news stories about how wonderful it is when this service member comes home. And it is truly wonderful. But the bottom generally falls out. Now, this is not for all families, but this is for some families where the family hits crisis mode about 72 hours after that family member comes home. There has been a new family normal that has established. Children have grown and changed. There are different ways of communication. There may be different expectations. The service member may be coping with what is normal and what is not normal. And all of these things have a huge impact on the family dynamic. So it's important for us to make sure that the school presents itself as in a way that the families feel comfortable giving the information that there's a deployment or a reintegration, or that they can ask for help. So one way that we can do that is for the school to have the family feel welcome right from the start. And so the question that I will ask is, what strategies do your schools use to welcome highly mobile students and families and help them integrate into your community? And if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to answer. There are many ways through the different things that I've been involved in with different school communities, as well as these past programs that we've done that are really wonderful for families to help make families feel better. Having peer mentors for students, one-on-one orientation sessions for families, giving them a tour of the school. Now, giving them a tour of the school is wonderful, but what if you added a child, a student, that would be in that student's same class, and let them help with the tour of the school. They're going to give the kid perspective far more interestingly than you are. Thank you, Cecilia. Pairing with another student during the first week in attendance, right, tour of a school ahead of time. And in one of our highly populated schools, that's something that's done every time. This family is toured around the school before the first day. That way they feel a little bit more comfortable when they walk in. So yes, perfect, thank you. We can have students in lunch bunches, welcome bags with local resources, coupons, maybe a school shirt, make families aware of community resources, connect students with other new students, have the PTO reach out to the new family and welcome them. All of these things that are wonderful opportunities for our families to become more integrated. And once they feel more integrated, they will be much more likely to inform us that there is something going on with their family. Okay, so MIC3, the Military Interstate Compact Children's Commission, is law in 50 states, as well as our partnership that we have with the Department of Defense Education Activities. So this is, what we do in this is make sure that there is an understanding for military families, that highly transient population, as they're moving. So the easiest way that I can say all of it is that it seeks to level the playing field for highly transient military children throughout their transition process, okay? It is not intended to impact curriculum or local standards of education. What it does do is provide an understanding for things such as A and 1 entrance ages. So for example, if a student is in kindergarten in the sending school, in the sending state, but they have enrolled and attended kindergarten in that state, and they've moved to your state, but the kindergarten age is later, then that children is still considered a kindergartner. It provides for transfer of records in a timely fashion, placement and attendance in the proper class until it can be determined otherwise, depending, based on the knowledge that they come, to the school with their records. Graduation requirements, the receipt of special education services, immunizations, and extracurricular participation. I could speak for an hour on the Interstate Compact in and of itself, but for the sake of time today, I'm just giving you that very quick overview. I do recommend that anybody that works with military children looks into the Military Interstate Compact. And you can do that by going to www.mic3.net, and you will find all sorts of information, printouts, resources, flyers there. If you have any questions, you can also reach directly to me, and I can help you with the information that you may need for the Interstate Compact. If you have any questions regarding a student that comes to your school, you may also reach to me or to Tyler Backus, and his information is throughout this presentation as well. And either one of us will be able to help you and guide you through the process. Okay, so why is all of this important? It's important to understand the needs of military students so that we understand why we are identifying them in the first place. Identifying military students is part of an ESSA mandate starting in the school year 18-19, which is this year. And the reason that it is mandated is because we are looking at whether or not these students are succeeding academically in the face of the many moves that they have. At the current time, in the state of Maine, as in many other states, the data is inconsistent. And so we are looking to find that we can have more consistent data, which will help the families. The form that you have in front of you that is on this slide is the new Maine military identifier. We are hoping that this form will be something that will be distributed in the near future. This seeks to answer the question why. So why is it important for families to identify? And then, you know, what the needs are for military families. Without that, it's very hard for families to understand why the question is being even asked. One of the other really important parts of this is that it helps active support agencies like myself to know where military families reside. We do not get a listing as to where military families live scattered throughout the state. So this helps us to identify what school districts we need to make sure that we are supporting in the greatest amount. All school districts need support for military students, but we also know that there are pockets of populations that we want to make sure that we support. It's for that reason that we are also identifying our National Guard and Reserve families. If we have a call-up, there could be many families that would instantly face a crisis because their Guard or Reserve member would suddenly be deployed. So we are really looking to have this information present so that we can continue to support the school districts and provide the resources and opportunities to them and to the families as needed. A couple of very important facts about this. Data collection should be at the beginning of each school year. It's a questionnaire that should go into the first day paperwork, and it should be one form per child. It's really important that the forms are filled out for each family member, and it is in the registration paperwork that goes out. At no point does this information come back to the Department of Education or to myself or any other entity. What we get is a number of military children that are in that school district. That's really important for families to know. Nobody's specifically identifying their child. No one is specifically looking at them as a family. We are just trying to locate where military families reside so that we can provide the best support for them. From an educational standpoint, there are districts that could potentially meet federal impact aid requirements. That is a big task to apply for federal impact aid, and one that I can certainly provide resources on where districts could find more information as to whether or not they fall into that bracket for application for that. So the big thing is, how can we support our military families? And one of the simplest ways is to add a military family section to your district webpage or your school webpage. In that, I would love for you to include the following, which is my website, navymwrmidland.com. That has lots of resources in it, as that is where I would lead many families to as well. We can also educate your administrators and teachers about the needs of military students. And that is something that myself and my counterparts in the Guard and Reserve would love to come in and speak to you about, to make sure that you have all of the necessary tools in your tool belt to best support our kids. You can provide a welcoming committee, as we discussed. You can have a great Veterans Day celebration. It's a fantastic way to start to identify your military families, as well as to help them feel part of the community. And it happens to be April right now, which is the month of the military child. April 10th this year is National Purple Up Day. So we encourage all schools and all students to wear purple in honor of the month of the military child on April 10th this year. This slide right here is lots and lots of resources for families, including information from my counterparts at the Maine National Guard. They are a tireless and wonderful group that I enjoy working with, and can be a huge source of resources for many of you, as well as many other resources on here, too many to name. And then there are school resources as well. These are all great things to add on to that webpage for families so that you know what is out there and what's available to you. You can educate yourselves. You can potentially even earn CEUs by using different things on the Penn State Clearinghouse for Military Families website, taking some online webinars, doing that as well. So again, lots and lots of information that you can go for. That is all that I have for you all. I do thank you for supporting our military families. Your understanding of their needs is at the heart of everything that I do. And if I can help in any way to have you better understand that, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. So we have one more chat question in here. As Kristen alluded to a little bit, one of the things that all of these populations that we work with struggle with is staying on track and graduating on time, transferring of credits and all the pieces that can go into that. So in the chat box, if you wouldn't mind sharing what strategies your schools might have in place to help mobile students to stay on track and graduate on time. Some of the previous responses that we have received include communicating with the sending and receiving districts to get the most recent transcripts, having a structured advisory program, matching up with available support services, using alternative education programs, student assistance teams, providing transportation for after-school tutoring, and there's a few others on here too. And really meeting kids where they are at. That was another one that led to quite a bit of discussion in one of our sessions. And these all will be shared. These are also available on the website for anyone to look up to for effective strategies for each of these questions. That's another handout that's up on the website on that main link that we shared at the beginning, and that we will share again at the end. Thank you for sharing. So we have scheduled school counselor check-ins, mentorship, team partnerships, student success center in our high school, tutoring for students who are highly mobile. Awesome. Great, thank you. And we will be sure to add these responses as well to the document that will be up on the website for other schools to access.
Okay, hi. This is Gail Erdheim, the homeless education consultant at the Maine Department of Ed. And my job is to oversee the implementation of the McKinney-Vento Act, which is the federal legislation regarding homeless students. Unlike the Migrant program, where services are primarily provided through the Department of Education, homeless education services are expected to be provided at the district level, and every school district is expected to have a homeless education liaison who is the primary point person for homeless services. Okay, in terms of eligibility, students who are eligible for services under the McKinney-Vento Act are students who meet the Act's definition of homelessness, which is a definition that says that if you have an irregular, inadequate, or unfixed nighttime residence, you would be eligible. Students living in shelters and transitional housing, students who are doubled up, that is living with relatives or other family members due to some sort of hardship situation, students who are totally unsheltered or are inadequately sheltered or living in substandard housing also qualify under McKinney-Vento. And it is the homeless liaison at the school district level who is responsible for assessing the situation of a family or a child and determining whether or not they're eligible. There's no minimum or maximum age for homelessness, no minimum or maximum duration of homelessness. I wanted to point out that if a student is in a migratory family, frequently their housing situation falls under the classification of perhaps substandard, and to ask everyone to remember that migrant students may also be eligible for supports due to them as a homeless student. Also, if students are homeless and are not physically staying with either a parent or a guardian, they're considered unaccompanied and homeless, and the homeless liaison at the district has some special responsibilities to make sure that those students have access to all the rights that anyone else does. Okay. We've been collecting data on homelessness for many years now, so we actually do have a pretty good idea of how things look across the state. And I just wanted to quickly share with you some of those recent statistics. Our homeless student population in Maine has really been increasing over the last couple of years. In 16-17, there were about 2,500 students identified. Most of our students, and this is true in Maine and across the country, are doubled up. They're staying with friends and relatives rather than in a shelter or on the street. An increasing number of our homeless students are unaccompanied. They are not living with their parents. An increasing number of our homeless students have disabilities. So you'll see that IDEA on the slide there indicates students with disabilities. And I did want to point out two areas where I think we can all be doing a better job of checking to make sure we're identifying students who are eligible for these services. It's a little surprising to me that only 4% of our homeless students are listed as unsheltered. That unsheltered category should also include kids who are inadequately sheltered, so students who are living in campgrounds, students whose housing is substandard. Those should be in the unsheltered category. And the area of particular concern is that we have not been identifying any of our migrant students as being eligible for homeless support. So it would be helpful going forward if you know that a student is eligible for migratory student services to do some investigation about their housing situation, because they may also be eligible under McKinney-Vento. Okay. We also, for many years, have been tracking how our homeless students are doing. So we know that we've got some room for growth in these areas. Typically, our homeless students have extremely high levels of chronic absenteeism. They fall significantly behind their peers in academic proficiency in all areas. And of great concern is our lagging graduation rate for homeless students. Okay, so what are the rights that students and families have by virtue of being eligible under McKinney-Vento? First of all, students who are homeless have the right to select the school that they're going to attend. They are either able to attend the school of origin, which is defined as the school where they last attended or the school where they were living before they became homeless, or they can attend any school that's available to anyone living in their current residence. And it's the homeless liaison's responsibility to evaluate the student's situation and to make a determination along with the family about which of those placements would better support the student. Let's see. Okay. Students who are homeless will typically want to stay in their school of origin. But in some situations that may not be the best situation, and they would be enrolling perhaps in the middle of a school year in the school where they are temporarily residing. If that's the case, and you are the liaison or connected with Liaison in that new school, you want to make sure that you get in touch with the school of origin right away. Try to conduct a simple needs assessment to figure out where the student is and what their critical needs are, so that you can begin addressing those critical needs immediately. You may not have students' records in hand when it's time for them to enroll, so you want to be able to gather whatever information you can from the family or through phone calls to determine where the student is, so that your enrollment is as accurate as possible until you are able to get records. And another thing you just want to do, as Kristen was saying, is to do whatever you can to help the student and the family make connections in their new community, so that they feel comfortable in their new home and are able to fully participate in the life of the school. Okay. If a student who is requesting enrollment in your school is unaccompanied, meaning they are not staying with their parent or legal guardian, you can't refuse to enroll them if their parent is not consenting or participating in their education at that point. You need to enroll them right away, and the local liaison is charged with assisting with that enrollment, making sure that the student has the same voice in the school selection process as they would if a parent was present, and making sure that they are aware of and have access to all of the rights that they're due. You may want to do a review of your district and school's policies having to do with the things that parents need to typically sign in order for students to participate, and evaluate whether there are alternative strategies that will allow unaccompanied students to participate in programs without parent signatures. You are certainly able to contact parents if that is not a problem with the school. We want our students and our schools to be connected with parents whenever possible, but if that isn't possible, just remember that the student has the right to full participation, and any policies that pose barriers to that should be evaluated for possible review. Okay. Students and families also have the right to dispute any enrollment, any eligibility decisions, and any school placement decisions that you make. Local districts are required to have local policies, and there's a sample local dispute resolution policy on our website that you can take a look at if you don't have one in place. It should include an appeal process, and I want to suggest that the liaison not be the person that that those decisions are appealed to. The liaison's responsibility is really to make sure that families have the support that they need to go through that process, and it's difficult sometimes to be an advocate and a support person if you're also the decider. In addition to local dispute processes, there has to be and is a final dispute resolution process here at the state. Those disputes come to my office, and I have a timeline for resolving those disputes. The description of that process is also on our website. If the family is dissatisfied with my resolution, it goes on to the commissioner. And the important thing to know is that while a dispute process is ongoing, the child has the right to attend the school that the family has selected, and we treat the family as if the decision that their eligibility for McKinney-Vento services is in place. So if transportation is needed, it would have to be provided during that interim period. Okay. Speaking of transportation, students who are eligible under McKinney-Vento do have the right, if they need it, to transportation between their home community and the school that they're attending. That transportation right extends to preschool students. Even if you don't provide transportation to your preschool program, the family has has the right to transportation if they're eligible under McKinney-Vento. Okay. Families have the right to equal access to any program that your school provides. The expectation is that we will be providing services to them within regular education programs and absolutely minimize the extent to which they are segregated into special programs for homeless students. All homeless students are categorically eligible for free school meals. There should not be a need for families to have to fill out an application for those meals. Another important thing to know is that the federal government expects that Title 1A funds will be used to support the needs of homeless students. So any student who is attending a Title I school should have access to the services that are available at that school. Kids who are attending a school in your district where that school is not a Title I school, they are also eligible to receive services comparable to what other children in the district receive under Title I. And there is actually a set aside in everyone's Title I application of funds that need to be reserved for providing those services. And finally, just a quick note that a student's housing status under McKinney-Vento it's personal and protected information. It's part of the school record and should be handled like anything else that's handled under FERPA. Parent permission would be required to share that information. All right, so a quick chat question. If you want to take a minute and think about the strategies that your schools use at this point to make sure that highly mobile students are immediately enrolled, would you mind entering those into the chat and sharing them with us? Great. Some of the strategies that we've collected in our past sessions are to gather information from families for initial class placements, to make calls to the previous school before the records arrive, to involve the guidance office, to make sure that office staff at the school, not just the homeless liaison, but folks who work front office, are aware of the homeless law and are trained every school year, and to use key questions to identify students. Let's see if we have anything new coming up here. Not see anything. Okay. Okay. So if you are the homeless liaison at your district, just wanted to quickly make you aware of the other responsibilities that you have besides assuring that children and families are accorded their full rights. The homeless liaison has the job of trying to identify homeless students using some of the strategies that we talked about before. Making sure that families have access to information and referrals to outside agencies for any services that they need. The homeless liaison is responsible for making sure that parents are aware of their children's rights, are aware of all the educational opportunities that are available in the school, and that they're afforded meaningful opportunities to participate in the life of the school and in their children's education themselves. And just emphasizing there that the right to dispute resolution is a really important right to share with parents. Homeless liaisons are also charged with making sure that the public at large is aware of the rights of homeless students, and many liaisons will post notices about the rights of the McKinney-Vento rights around places in the community where housing and unstable families might visit. They're responsible for making sure that other staff in the school are aware of McKinney-Vento rights. It's a really difficult job to do if you are the only person who knows what's going on. So guidance staff, front office staff, social work staff especially really needs to be aware. Liaisons are often in a place where they will need to collaborate with other agencies to make sure that students and families have access to the resources that they need. And a really important responsibility of the homeless liaison is when students are transitioning to post-secondary programs to officially verify the student's homeless status so that the student is both eligible for financial aid and may not have to provide parent information if they're unaccompanied. One of the great things I think about ESSA's reauthorization of the McKinney-Vento Act is an emphasis on making sure that whoever is serving as a homeless liaison in a district actually has the time and capacity to do the many facets of that job. So if you are struggling to do all those things and you are the liaison, it's worth having a conversation with administration so that they also understand the breadth of those responsibilities and allow you the time and resources to accomplish them. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Amelia now, and she will talk with you about provisions for children in foster care.
Okay, so this is Amelia Lyons again. I am also the foster care point of contact at the Maine Department of Education. And so I just wanted to share a few things about the foster care educational provisions with you all, recognizing that most people are probably familiar with McKinney-Vento. Unfortunately, foster care and McKinney-Vento have a lot of similarities going through these two programs. So the initial Title I Part A provisions for students in foster care, it really exists to make sure that we can get some of that educational stability that we've been talking about with all of these different groups. It establishes specific educational rights, and one of the things it requires is a district foster care point of contact. So every district should have, as they have a McKinney-Vento liaison, should have a foster care point of contact. At the district level, this can be the same person, and we're seeing that it often is. If you don't know who this person is, it might be a good idea to check with your district and see if it could be you. We are working on updating this in NEO with the Department of Education so that this would be available. So there would be a quick search just like we have now for the McKinney-Vento liaisons. The provisions also require a state foster care point of contact at the DOE. Again, that's myself, and also one at DHHS, and that is Bobby Johnson. So the definition of students in foster care, students who are in 24-hour out-of-home care, who are placed away from their parents or guardians, and for whom DHHS has placement and care responsibilities. In the past, students who had been identified as awaiting foster care under McKinney-Vento now are under this definition. Foster homes can include group homes, foster homes, kinship foster homes. There's a wide range. The main piece being here that they're in 24-hour out-of-home care and DHHS has care responsibilities. So there's three core things that we want to remember when thinking about the educational rights of students in foster care. That is the right to the school of origin, which includes transportation, the right to a best interest determination, and the right to immediate enrollment. And we will go through each of these. So the school of origin, again, similar to McKinney-Vento, is the school the student was attending when they were placed in foster care or at the time of a subsequent change in foster care placement. And generally, students should remain enrolled in their school of origin unless after a best interest determination is decided that it wouldn't be in their best interest to remain in that school, as Gail mentioned. So the best interest determination is generally it's either a meeting or a conversation between quite a few people that's really done collaboratively, where they're looking at the student situation and a wide variety of factors about the student's unique needs to be able to decide, is the school of origin the right place, or should they transfer to the new school of residence? While this process is in place, the student should remain in their school of origin until it is completed. We want to make sure to avoid having students change schools multiple times. If, for example, they were moved to a different school and then it was decided that school of origin had been the best place originally and then brought back to that school. We just don't want that to happen. So until this process is fully complete, students should remain in their school of origin as much as possible. And this should really involve, these conversations should involve the people who understand the student and the student's unique needs the most. So who do you think should be involved in the best interest determination meetings? So who are some examples of people who would know the student's needs well? And go ahead and type those into the chat box. We have like 5 categories of student, of 5 categories of people who could be involved here. All right, so these are the ones that we think of, but you know, it could be very different for each student. Yeah, so some people have shared classroom teacher, principal, foster parent, absolutely. Student, if age appropriate. Any other legal representative, educational decision maker, special education if that's involved, guidance counselor, social worker, DHHS, McKinney-Vento liaison, foster parent, great, yeah, great responses. And for some students, this might be, you know, their soccer coach or someone else who really knows the student and knows their situation well. And then what are some things that we should take into consideration when deciding the best interest determination for school placement? So again, just share in the chat, what are some important things to think about in deciding should the student stay in this school or should they move to their school of residence? And there's a really long list that the federal government gives us that we can post on the website, but we don't need to go through all of that today. We can just go through some examples. So I see distance from original school to their new school of residence, definitely. Distance and time it might take. We don't want to send a preschool student on an hour-long trip to a new school necessarily, or to their previous school. We also have the age and grade of the student are important things to consider. The placement of their siblings. The number of placements they've had to date, and also if family reunification is the goal, and this is really seen as a temporary situation, then we want to, we'd obviously want to consider that. Thinking about the availability of services, including special education. Thinking about the student's preference, I think is really important and something we sometimes forget to bring up. And really their connection to their teachers and students and the community that they're in, and potentially any involvement in extracurricular activities as well. Great, thank you. Another thing to consider is that it might be in the best interest of the student to attend the school of origin for a limited duration of time, maybe just through the end of the semester or through the end of the school year, but that is an option, and that's something that the best interest determination meeting can decide of whether this is, it doesn't have to be a permanent resolution that they come to, but rather it could be a temporary decision, and they could revisit it again. The one thing that we do not want to take into consideration here is transportation costs. We're talking about the best interest of the child and not the costs that could be incurred. Time and distance, of course, are important things to think about, again, for best interest of the child, but transportation costs, not so much. So it's up to, for transportation, it is up to the districts and DHHS to collaborate and establish policies to help students who need transportation to remain in their school of origin so that they can do that. If there's not another agreement, districts of origin are responsible for providing that transportation, and they should document all of those costs associated with it. At this time, we recommend first checking if the student would be eligible for getting transportation reimbursed through the Department of Education if they're receiving special education services and transportation is included in that. And always reach out to DHHS and start that conversation to see what's possible. And then it is the third option being between the districts to sort out how to cover those costs. We are working on making some of this more clear. At this time, the federal guidance is quite vague, where it just says districts and DHHS have this responsibility. So we are working on that, and hopefully we'll have something to you all soon. So another question we have is, what strategies do you use to provide transportation for highly mobile students? There's been a lot of creative solutions to these transportation issues, and we want to hear from others around the state who have been dealing with these issues. How can we best provide transportation in creative ways for students who are highly mobile and who need transportation? So just go ahead and share in the chat box. And some that we have heard before, relationships between liaisons, point of contacts, and transportation staff in neighboring districts, or in districts where they're seeing students transfer quite a bit. That's another one, making those agreements. Using technology to maintain records and plot routes. Coming up with formal agreements and MOUs. Using public transit when that's available. I know that's tricky in this state, but if you happen to have it. Approved carpools, van or taxi services, fuel reimbursements if the families have vehicles. Looking at interagency solutions, partnering with other community organizations that might be able to provide transportation is a big one. Utilizing vans, collaborating with other districts. Yeah, those were most of the ideas, and we'll add anything else to this list again, and that will be available up on the website. So the other option, if students if the best interest determination decides the student should be placed in the school where they are residing, then districts need to enroll immediately, very similar to McKinney-Vento. So this is with or without documentation. The good thing about students in foster care is that usually the school will receive some basic information about emergency contact, resident, social worker, record release from DHHS at the time of enrollment. So they will have some documentation that comes with them, but that they do have a right to immediate enrollment. And as always, if any disputes come up, DHHS does have the authority to make the final decision. Schools can school districts can dispute DHHS's decision, but during that process, the student needs to attend the school that DHHS has selected, and transportation would need to be provided. Whoops. So the district foster care point of contact, if this is you, this is a few pieces about the role. They're really there to support the students in foster care and to help identify and support the coordination between districts and DHHS to help make sure the students are enrolled and regularly attending school, and to participate in these best interest determinations with the DHHS representatives and ensure school enrollment is in a timely fashion, transfer of records if necessary. And also, this is really to help develop the procedures for coordinating cost-effective transportation and facilitating professional development for district staff. Those are the other pieces of that role. All right, so looks like we're going to wrap up a few minutes early here. Just in closing, this is the site that we have. This will bring you to the Department of Education's highly mobile webpage. It was just a really long link, so I made it into a tiny URL. So you can go to tinyurl.com/Maine DOE 2019 and be able to access materials. We'll be adding those. We'll be adding more throughout the week there, but we do have quite a bit up there already for you. Some things that will be coming soon is professional development samples. Districts have requested, particularly for foster care, just a really brief PowerPoint on what the rights and responsibilities are, and I'll be working on that and posting that PowerPoint onto the website shortly. And then we'll also have a feedback form that'll be going out to everyone who participated in a workshop or the webinar, just so we can hear what we can do better next time. So if you have any questions or comments, please do share them in the chat. There's also an option to send a chat to the whole group or just to the presenters or anyone else there. So feel free to do that. We will be online here for a few minutes. And we promise to respond to anything that comes up. Here's all of our contact information. So Gail, myself, Amelia, we also have Tyler's information. He's the one at the Department of Education, who's the Military Family Education Liaison. And then Kristen, who you heard from today. We have her info up there as well. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we look forward to speaking with you soon. Have a great day.